The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
The good lady from 34 stated with the MMIS, that will give us a lot better data, better projectional data for this budget. But within it, I think the good gentleman, one of the things that he pointed out was that based on the number of the new forecasted population that we're looking at, the numbers don't match up. Why are we adding these numbers so high? One, I think that again, if we don't fund it this year, then we potentially have a chance to fund it next year. But that's okay. It's not bad if we have a supplemental. Right now, we're looking at way overfunding it as we sit right now. The other thing is that I really have a tough time with is what we did last year. We went ahead and gave provider rates across the board to everybody. We only have a certain amount of population, but we went ahead and jumped everybody in with all these provider rate increases that were out there. Provider rates, huge cost increase at what has been. We're seeing adjustments, and some of the ones that we actually had done last year were 128% increase over their previous one. So to me, there are multiple ways where we actually can kind of reel in some of the control of this. Even if we did a 2% provider rate decrease across the board, again, one of the areas where I'm struggling with is like the skilled nursing facilities. We said we got to get more skilled nurses. Well, then you actually have the at-home caretaker aspect of it, where they're keeping people in the skilled nursing, which is costing us a lot more because we've given them the raise and the people that were in that, when we should be sending those people back to their house where it was actually a lot less cost. We aren't managing the population very well within this. We have a VCO model. The idea was to try to keep them out of the hospitals. One of the things we're seeing an increased rate of hospital usage. One, I'd say the bigger issues within this budget overall is we have to have policy bills that come out that directly deal with this. We did pass one this year. Everybody thought it was this great, massive win. It barely did anything. We have to figure out how to get a handle on this, because this is something that we do not have control over. Next downturn that actually happens, what do you think is going to actually happen? We are going to be pulling massive levers at the worst times to pull massive levers, because this is not something that we get to have a lot of control in. So I think bringing it back to JFAC, bringing it back to cutting some of the forecast adjustments down, bring it back, cutting it down, potentially a couple of those different provider rate increases that were actually done that I don't think were justified. done, and then relook at that going forward if those were actually necessary things. So with that, unfortunately, I would ask for your no vote. Thank you.
Heard the other motion. Gentleman from 11.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the bill.
Someone has the floor.
Thank you very much. You know, looking at this total of $5.25 billion, including the supplemental or the enhanced budget, you know, you add $1 billion to that, and you got almost all the revenue that the state of Idaho collects. Just about $1 billion more than the Medicaid budget. Don't you find that weird? Don't you find that unacceptable? We're receiving 42% of our state budget from the federal government. 42%. When that money's gone, what happens? We got, I mean, this budget has grown 11.5% this year, plus the enhancement budget of 14.7%. It's out of control. It started out as a program just a few years ago, and in the first 5 years, I think, or 4 years, it was 66% growth, and it's exponentially growing. So let's say a waiter comes in here and brings everybody a 32-ounce prime ribs and a baked potato all smothered in butter and sour cream. Does that mean you have to eat it all in one sitting? No, we don't need to eat it all in one sitting. We don't need to keep on voting for enhancement budgets that are huge amounts of money added on to the maintenance budgets that we already did. This program of the dual budget, I was so excited when I read about that and heard about that a couple years ago, because we were going to continue to fund government with modest growth to cover increases in wages and benefits, to keep the lights on, to provide services to the people of Idaho. And the enhancement budgets were supposed to be for all these extra things, all these, you know, wish lists of the agencies. But the legislature is treating enhancement budgets like they're part of the maintenance budget. And they're saying, we've got to fund this in order to keep the programming. We don't. And if we vote down enhancement budgets because of the excessive expense, that extra 16 ounces or so of that prime rib that I was talking about, we vote those down, they do not have to come back to us. Enhancement budgets do not have to return to us. We do not have to vote for them. We can get the maintenance budgets taken care of, do the business of the people, save the people some money, and go home. Let's vote no on these enhancement budgets. This stuff should be in the maintenance budgets in the first place if it's an ongoing program. If it's a brand new program, it's an enhancement budget. And guess what, folks? Next year, this money that's in this enhancement budget and every other enhancement budget is going to be part of the maintenance budget. And all we're doing is growing government. We talked about a few days ago, several days ago, whatever, we passed DOGE. Are we serious about DOGE? Several days ago, we had the equivalent of the good gentleman from the second floor from Florida here. And he stayed up there and talked to us about depending on federal money, which is going to dry up. And when it does, we are in a world of hurt in Idaho because 42% of our money for our budget is coming from the federal government. We've got to reel it back. And you know what the good gentleman said he did? He said he sent back $1.4 billion to the federal government. Why aren't we doing that? That's DOGE. That's responsibility. Let's reel in these budgets. It's what we promised our voters when we campaigned for this office. We were going to cut spending, reel in waste, all these things. That's our pledge that we made, and we made it to our voters in our districts. We need to kill this enhancement budget, and all the rest of them, they're on today's docket. I'll be a no. Thank you.
For the debate on the motion. Gentleman 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I don't work this budget. I'd rather crawl through a cactus patch backwards than to work on this. But the fact of the matter is, all of the items on here, I just got off the line with the analyst, all the items on here are driven by federal, state, or court-ordered requirements.
All right, folks, welcome to Idaho Signal. We are on the air here today. It is April 2nd, 2025. As you can see here, they are debating in the House Senate Bill 1201. This is an enhancement portion of the Division of Medicaid in the Health and Welfare Department. And we just saw a fantastic debate there. Good analogies from Representative Kent Marmon. Love any kind of food analogies. They really paint a juicy picture for us all. So yeah, good debate there. It's interesting. I have heard around that today's enhancement budgets become tomorrow's maintenance budgets, and so we'll see if that goes. I mean, when they separated the budget last year, and we came up with this whole notion of just having the maintenance budget and having the enhancement budgets, that this would help us reduce overall government and so forth. And as you've seen, time and again, anytime they're dealing with money here, it's let's chip away over here, let's add over here. And as our state continues to grow and people continue to move in, the revenue, the tax revenue that keeps coming into the state just grows and grows and grows because of the amount of people that are coming in, the amount of inflation that has been going on for the past few years, and of course all of the federal dollars and all the COVID money that's still lingering around those halls. They just turn around and start spending it. Now, if they did it in a way that benefits all Idahoans, then maybe there could be a succinct argument for it. But as a fiscal hawk myself, I just say give the money back to the people. Just give it back, and we'll stimulate what we need to do on our own. But that's how it goes for now. It's a slow process. When you're trying to turn these budgets in and get them to start reducing government, and you start these new programs, there is going to be an ounce of just slowly building upon these wins. But you definitely do have to start somewhere, and you got to start cutting. And Medicaid is one of the biggest things. We opened the show here with Josh Tanner talking about putting guardrails on the Medicaid expansion program that we have here. And frankly, there's not a lot of folks out there that think that it did enough. And so we'll try again next session, apparently. Over in the Senate, they're going through some bills as well, but there was a lot of activity in the committees today. There was some, there's so much to cover. There's so much to cover that I'm going to give you a tip right now. If you are addicted to what's going on in Boise right now, watch this show, right? Go back in the archives, catch up on this program, but also you got to be on X. I know there's folks out there that just, you love your Facebook group and the chatter that goes on in the Facebook group, but Facebook sometimes is like the worst place of all, because there's these long threads and people just get lost in one tiny little chatter group, and misinformation gets thrown around all the time. And the next thing you know, you're out there fighting for a cause that doesn't even exist anymore, and because of the algorithm on Facebook and because of all the stuff that goes on there, if you're on Facebook, I also encourage you to go over on X and have an account there so you can see what happens, usually in real time. I mean, the updates that happen on X, it's like that is where the news at. You're seeing all this national news about Daily Wire closing down or winding, getting rid of folks. And I'm not saying they're closing down, but there's so many different big news outlets from the Washington Post and the New York Times and all these dying traditional media outlets that include now places like Daily Wire and even The Blaze. I mean, these big giant media companies, they can't compete with the information that flows on X. And so I just highly encourage you to spend some time over there and get yourself an account. All right. That being said, we'll continue to pay attention, like I said, to what's going on in in the House and Senate. But this morning, let's get going on with the big story. Of course, is the Medical Freedom Act that was vetoed by the governor on Saturday. A couple of new bills were presented, one in the Senate, one in the House. And over in the Senate, Senator Dan Foreman presented the bill that would address the governor's concerns. And then in the House, there was another bill that addressed the governor's concerns, but they were different. And we explained yesterday the difference between the two. So today in the Senate, there was a little bit of a back and forth, and I won't bury the lead here. The Senate bill, I believe it was sent to the amending order, to the 14th order, so they could address this daycare issue, because daycares were made an exclusion in this particular piece of legislation. And that got some people worried about whether or not daycares would be, parents and children going to daycares would be held to a different standard than the rest of us. So here's on that. Here's some banter, some discussion between Senator Brandon Shippey and Senator Dan Foreman, the bill sponsor.
Senator Foreman, so it's my understanding that you will be striking in 73502 here in this new Senate bill 1210, that you will be striking the portion where it says except for any daycare center, daycare facility, family daycare home, or group daycare facility as defined in this section. My understanding is you're hoping to strike that in the 14th order of business.
Senator Foreman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Shippey, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Foreman, I guess maybe if you could just shed a little light, maybe if you have any information of maybe why that why it felt important to put that in the first place, and then I guess if you can maybe shed a little light on that, and then why it's now being stricken, because I know I received a lot of concern about it from a lot of different folks out here in Idaho. Maybe if you could just shed a little light on that.
Senator Foreman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Shippey, I didn't opt to put that verbiage in. That was requested by the governor's staff. We worked with his chief of staff on it. I can't directly speak to why they wanted it in there. The only recollection I have with respect to that question is they felt that daycares were adequately covered under other sections of Idaho code, which is true. Currently they are. There was some talk about a court case that came up. They didn't say that their request to have that verbiage in the bill was driven by the court case. I can't speak to that. I was comfortable with it for a while because daycare families are covered under existing Idaho code. If you wish as a parent to opt your child out of vaccines, you simply have to state that in a letter and present it, and your kids are opted out. And that's exactly the same procedure that our public schools use. I will say, contrary to a lot of the negative comments that people are hearing, the governor's office was very open, very cordial, and invited me to come and work with them, and I appreciate that. That's the way government's supposed to work. And it resulted in a good agreement, as per this bill with its changes, that both sides are happy with. And I know a lot of folks got upset. They seemed to feel that, the bill was falling apart, but I guess if I might, Mr. Chairman, just a word of advice. The system sometimes is a little slow, but it's a beautiful system, and it works as long as all parties are willing to cooperate and work in good faith. And that's exactly what happened here. So kudos to the system, kudos to the governor's office for working with me on this. I appreciate it. I think we have a good bill.
Okay, I love Dan Foreman. Good guy. Good guy. Dan Foreman is a good senator there. Protecting the system. This is the system we have to deal with. This is our republic, right? This is the way it moves. It should move slowly, and there should be civil discourse and debate, and that's good. So the people spoke, and everybody got riled up and said, "Hey, what's going on here with this bill?" One of those folks was a citizen out there. You'll probably recognize her. Definitely a forefront in this arena, the Health Freedom Idaho, and she spoke today, and this is her, Leslie Manukian. Let's bring her on.
I'm here from District 26 in my individual capacity. However, I also represent a nationally known nonprofit, Health Freedom Defense Fund. We stand to protect all human beings' rights to medical freedom. And this bill, although the proposals are very positive to strike the daycare portion, the public has not had the opportunity to see this bill. And I think that it should be actually opposed because it has not been publicly displayed for anyone to review. So we can't see what all has been inserted there. Furthermore, I want to say that I do not believe that there has been good faith in the way that this has been conducted. I actually
Ms. Manukian, I'd appreciate if you wouldn't question motives of those who have brought the legislation. Just speak to the legislation if you would.
Okay, well, someone else made the claim that it was good faith, but the governor was very specific in his veto that his objection was that there was gray area around the ability of schools to exclude sick children. The bill does not even touch that. It never touched that. We actually drafted new language to assure the governor that that was not a problem, and then he changed his requests. I do not believe that's good faith. You may, I don't. And I think furthermore that this should have been posted so that everybody could review it and see it, which has not been done. And it is not acceptable ever to sacrifice our children in service to the freedom of adults. This bill needs to be either complete, that daycare portion needs to be removed without a doubt, but we also need to be able to see what else has been added so that we can actually speak intelligently and from a place of education rather than speculation. So at this point, I support removing of the daycare portion. I, however, am very concerned that there have been additions which may not be consistent with the original intention of the bill, and that should be reviewed before it proceeds. Thank you.
There we go. So it's going to the 14th order. It will get addressed, and that's good news there. So, but very, very, very good comments there. That's the concern that most people have, and we gotta have those. We gotta have people stepping up for this. So, very good, very good. All right. Over in the House, however, is the other version of the bill that didn't even talk about daycares. It just talked about that, what was it, Section 33512. This is House Bill 472. And Representative I think Representative Josh Tanner presented the RS once it got printed, and then Representative Rob Beiswinger presented the bill today officially for the hearing.
Bill 472, you heard from Representative Tanner yesterday on the same bill. It's pretty simple. It's the Idaho's Medical Freedom Act. It sailed through the House before. It got to the governor's desk, got a veto on it. There's some objection the governor raised to it. He put it in a letter, and so we have a letter here. He was worried that the bill removed the parents' ability to remove sick kids from schools. Well, it wasn't correct, and so I don't know, what happened there, but so we came back, redrafted the bill, and on page 3, you'll find on line 7 through like 11 there, we referenced the school code that does give them permission to send home a sick kid. This bill just says you can't force someone to take, a medication or a vaccine or an injection or any kind of medical intervention as a condition coming back. If you're sick and you got measles, you got the fever, you got lice, whatever, you feel free to send them home. That's an existing state law. This bill does nothing to change that. And we can talk about the bill and some of its effects, but I think we're all kind of familiar with the issue, and I would urge your yes vote on it.
Okay, good. Now, of course, this being the House State Affairs Committee, Representative Stephanie Mickelson just can't seem to quite understand exactly what's going on. Here's her exchange with Representative Beiswinger.
Representative Mickelson.
Representative Beiswinger, Mr. Chairman, can you tell me what you think shall not refuse means?
Representative Beiswinger, where are we at? Representative Mickelson, could you help us for the edification of
I'm
the committee?
on page 2, line 29 or 30 and 31.
Okay.
29, 31. Well, I mean, shall not refuse. You shouldn't turn them away. You shouldn't. I could pull up my dictionary or a thesaurus, I guess, but no. I mean, the point is what that paragraph's saying is that you can't require my medical intervention. You can't tell somebody you can't come to my store unless you get a flu shot or this or that.
Okay.
Follow up?
Can you show me where in the bill, because I haven't found it, we talk about medical freedom, but we don't talk about individual responsibility here. So can you show me where in the bill, if somebody refuses medical intervention and causes a problem, where they take responsibility?
Representative Beiswinger.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that issue is specific. It's not really addressed in this bill.
Okay.
Is that a law somewhere? Like if you like let me just game theory this out here. If let's say you walk into a party and maybe you don't even have symptoms yet, but you're contagious, right? Like you're developing something, you're a carrier. Or maybe you do, maybe you sneeze and then like somebody else gets sick because you sneezed and they go, it was Matt who got me sick. Like, can I be sued because I got you sick out in a public place? Or like, is that what she's asking about? Like, are we going to criminalize somebody who's giving you like the flu? Is that what she's asking for? I don't understand this woman. I don't understand this person. I don't understand this being that walks among us who can't wrap her head around this. It is incredible, but she continues to just give us gems. Here's another clip.
Mr. Chairman and committee, I said yesterday I could live with it if it said vaccinations, but what the problem I have is we have a lot of, in this bill, what I see is a lot of people requesting their personal medical freedom, but no personal responsibility back on the other end. I also see that, we have been a state as Republicans and as a state that we believe in capitalism and free markets and so forth. And I feel like that this bill specifically goes, my freedoms are greater than anyone else's. And so I can come in your business. I can cause as much problems as I want because it said shall not refuse. And then the business owner or other people will get to bear the responsibility of one person demanding that they get their freedoms in a very specific way. For that reason, I will be a no on this bill.
She should be on Shark Tank. For those reasons, I'm out. The bill did not say, what did she say? Shall not refuse? It said, that's not what it says. It says it shall not require. Completely different. The bill says a business entity shall not require medical intervention. It does not say a business entity shall not refuse to serve somebody, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt here, but lady, read the bill. I mean, come on. This is why I could never sit in one of these committees as a legislator. I would lose my head. I would lose my head. I would consistently be walking out every time someone like that spoke. Do you not read English? She reads it, shall not require, and then she flips it on her head and says, shall not refuse. It's there in black and white. It is there in black and white. I don't get it, guys. I don't get it. Let's all think about it. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
The dictionary defines a pledge as Something that you give is a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years, inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Matt Edwards here. I don't know. I'm so defeated. I'm so defeated by watching Stephanie Mickelson debate. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Is she even debating? I don't even know. I don't even know what's going on. The House has adjourned for the day. That bill that we were watching when we opened the program, Senate Bill 1201, which was the Medicaid bill, it passed 40-30 was the ratio. What was interesting though was there were a lot of greens and reds going back and forth. Like people were like, should I vote for it? Should I not vote for it? Should I vote for it? Should I not vote for it? And at the end of the day, once the machine locked, there it was 40-30 on that bill. So we'll try again next year. Let's see if we can cut some more. Yeah, because that was a Senate bill, so it already got passed in the Senate, and so it just got passed in the House. The Senate is looks like they're wrapping up for the moment now. Both will come back later today, so if you are an evening watcher of the House or Senate floor, you can tune in on the Legislative IPTV website and watch them later. You know, we carried a couple nights ago, they were debating the DEI bill. Senator Ben Taves brought the DEI in higher education bill to the Senate floor. And that was also the day that we thought perhaps they would take up either the veto or take up one of these new Medical Freedom Act bills. But they ended up just debating the DEI bill and then a couple of budget bills after that. But it was a fascinating discussion on this DEI bill because basically, if I can boil it all down, it's basically saying we are not going to, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring us back to the time when people succeeded based on merit, based on your hard work, not based on this color of your skin or the fact that you're a woman. You know, I think it was Senator Blaylock who stood up and said, being a woman is not a disability, something along those lines. She's like, if I'm going to win an award, I don't want to win the women's award. I just want to win the award because my work was good enough. Right. So anyway, that bill now presented itself over in the House. Was it Education Committee? House Education Committee this morning. And rather than kind of set up again, you know, the whole impetus behind the bill, well, we can just jump into some of the discussion here between Representative Dygert, who sits on the House Education Committee, and Senator Ben Taves, who was the big sponsor of this bill, and their exchange. Let's watch that.
The definitions there on page 2. Wasn't critical theory originally developed as a legal theory? And then, you know, it gave birth to a lot of other topics like, you know, was mentioned here, gender theory or white fragility, all these other terms that you have listed here. Wouldn't it be just sufficient just to, as sort of an umbrella concept and understanding for this, just to refer back to those original authors of the critical theory that was developed?
Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tanner, I think that's a good point. That's why we start out with saying that that's like the umbrella through all the other ones. The problem is like I said, it's a moving target. It seems like there's a new term created every day in this realm. And so in order to try to be comprehensive, we use the common terms in that space. So that's the intent.
Very good. And of course, that was a clip with Representative Steve Tanner and Senator Taves. Sorry for that there. But the discussion continued. And so let's watch this next clip.
Has this type of concept been done anywhere else in our statutes, that we would call out a new procedure or a new issue and then ask that we go backwards and report our transgressions, if you will? Have we done that before?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Souter, I haven't studied all of our codes to know whether or not we've ever done that before, but I can give you the intent behind this one because I've worked a lot on this. The intent is to identify what has been done in the past so we don't repeat it. And I've said this, my wife actually says the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn anything from history because we often see things repeated. I'm a little bit more of an optimist, so I say if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. So the intent of this is to avoid repeating mistakes we've already made. The original legislation that came out of the work group had a 5-year look back to see what had been done. I thought that was a little bit too much, and so we narrowed that to 2 years. It actually will show the changes that were made, so I think it'll be really interesting for this committee to look at, because you'll see the year before the 3 resolutions that came out of the Department of Education's those resolutions that came out and kind of changed things, and you'll be able to see kind of what it looks like after that. So it'll give you a before and after look.
Yeah, very good. I think it's incredible. Again, we're at this point here where it's like how important is this bill, guys? Let's see if we can bring up the legislation if you have it, because this whole part about the legislative findings and intent, we've seen this be brought up in other bills where people say, you know, you have so much, you have all these legislative findings in this bill. This bill is, 10 pages long, and the 2 pages of it are this, and it's just explaining why this legislation is necessary. So I'm going to read this because I find this fascinating. This is in section 1, legislative findings and intent. The legislature finds that this state, Idaho, was founded upon the fundamental truth that all men are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. Among these rights is the freedom of inquiry, which, along with the principle of liberal toleration, is essential to the advancement and diffusion of knowledge. The Constitution of this state also declares that the stability of a republican form of government depends mainly upon the intelligence of the people. In contravention of these principles, a subversive ideology derived from the tenets of critical theory has infected the administration of this state's system of higher education, promoting a culture of division, ignorance, bigotry, and intolerance. Therefore, it is the intent of the legislature to eliminate all programs and initiatives within all public institutions of higher education predicated on the tenets of critical theory, or more commonly known under the title of, quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion, close quote. Folks, that is a scathing rebuke of the infestation of our higher educations by cultural Marxism. I mean, that is it right there. And that is in this, that's what people are voting on. That's what this bill is all about. It's already made its way out of the Senate. It is now being presented here in the House Education Committee this morning. It did pass out of that committee. with an overwhelming vote. But incredible language there. And of course, then it goes on to define all of the different words being used throughout the language, and that basically we're just going to go back to a merit-based system. Okay. There was some great public comment on this, and we want to highlight a couple of those here. First, I believe is this Grace from the Idaho Family Policy Center? Is that who popped up here to testify? Let's watch this. Oh no, that's because we didn't have that clip yet. But you've got it, right? You got it. All right, let's go. It's coming.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Grace Howitt, and I serve as policy analyst for Idaho Family Policy Center. We support Senate Bill 1198, and we thank the sponsors for bringing this bill forward. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have taken over our educational institutions like a cancer. While the left claims that these initiatives bring us closer to equality, in reality, DEI promotes injustice by treating individuals based on uncontrollable, immutable characteristics, rather than the content of their character or their abilities. This is dehumanizing and unbiblical. In Leviticus 19:15, we are told, "You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. In righteousness you shall judge your neighbor." This biblical teaching affirms that we should reward and punish individuals based on their actions and behaviors, not on other group-based characteristics. While this verse specifically refers to differential treatment based on socioeconomic status, it should also be applied to other group identifiers like race, ethnicity, or other external characteristics that one might use to define one group as oppressed and another as oppressor. And this is why we need to stop and prevent public universities from requiring DEI courses or maintaining DEI offices. Put simply, it is wrong for these government employees to treat others differently based on group characteristics rather than merit. Idahoans agree. According to statewide public opinion polling commissioned by Idaho Family Policy Center, 72% of likely Idaho voters agreed that DEI programs have no place in state government and public education. And with that, I ask you to protect true justice by sending Senate Bill 1198 to the floor with a do-pass recommendation.
Very good. And some more ammo in this argument came from a mom with a student in higher education. Listen to this. It's incredible.
Chairman and committee members, my name is Christina Hardy. I'm representing myself. I live in District 23, and I'm here to speak in favor of Bill S. 1198. My daughter is in her final semester of the ISU Dental Hygiene Program, a competitive, highly regarded program known for producing top-notch hygienists. During the Senate committee hearing for this bill, it was suggested that students at ISU aren't complaining about DEI in their classes. I asked my daughter about this, and she said that's because it's so rampant. It's just accepted as a normal part of her public education. She gave me some examples that I'll share. In her senior year required course called Community Health and Special Needs Populations, last October, an assignment required students to complete a privilege checklist, identifying their privileges based on class, race, cisgender status, sexuality, gender, and more. This doesn't foster unity. It perpetuates bias and opens wounds that never existed, twisting the positive intent of diversity, equity, inclusion. Another example is from the same class, and again in the fall, where the teacher celebrated LGBTQIA+ Oral Health Week, focusing on inclusive, affirming care for that community. She shared with the class resources for a case analysis assignment that they had. And I find myself asking, what does this have to do with dental hygiene? Are teeth different based on gender identity? Clearly, the professor's agenda aligns with the DEI principles defined on page 2 of this bill, and they simply don't belong in any dental hygiene program. I realize we already have Idaho Code 33-138, which promotes dignity and non-discrimination in public education and prevents critical race theory from being promoted. But I believe we need this next step that this bill provides to stop the ideological overreach in our higher education system that the vast majority of Idahoans would welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy, for your testimony. Questions, committee? Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hardy, would you say in those instances you just provided that your daughter felt discriminated against or uncomfortable?
Ms. Hardy.
I am not my daughter, so I don't know that I can speak to that exactly.
Good for her. I mean, you know, why speak on her behalf? Very good. Okay. Can you believe that? Can you believe that her daughter, I just want to reflect on that. Her daughter going to be just trying to become a dental hygienist, right? And has to be inundated with talking about cisgender this and even having to understand the term. You know, when I heard that term a couple of years ago, cis, that you're a cis, I was like, what is that? Where did that come from? And why are we using it? Like, if anybody to me, that is a derogatory term. If you call me the C word, is that even how you spell it? CIS, right? If you call me that, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind. Yeah. Anyway, I just like, I mean, and then her point right at the beginning here, which we did hear, is that, oh, this isn't happening. No one's complaining about being indoctrinated. It has gone so far that it's just accepted. It's part of the DNA. It's systemic, right? We all know that word, right? It's systemic. It is so in there. I remember seeing years ago, I mean, I don't know if this was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a documentary called Indoctrinate You, with the letter U. It was like Indoctrinate University. I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic documentary of this guy who just kind of like, I mean, all of the things about what they were pushing in the leftist wings of these colleges were just like all over the place. And this documentary is fantastic. So I highly recommend you look at it. I don't know where you can find it. It was kind of one of those like bootleg things that was being sent around. But anyway, it's now systemic. It is now absolutely systemic. Two quick clips here. Representative Barbara Ehart, Representative Kyle Harris, two fantastic legislators. One, an icon of the state legislature, and another one, a rising superstar. Let's watch these clips here from Ehart and Harris.
Representative Ehart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a couple of comments in supporting the motion. First, as was stated, I was on that committee, but I feel like I've been on this committee since 2019 when I first responded to the letter that came from Boise State with interim president Dr. Martin Shrimp as he was supposedly preparing the way for the incoming president. And as he outlined all the things here doing with DEI, I was completely taken back. Remember, I spent 15 years in higher ed, both coaching and teaching, and this had never been tenets that we had both encouraged and embraced. As a matter of fact, if those had been coaching tenets, we would have absolutely destroyed our team, because you cannot unite by dividing, and that's exactly what DEI does. A comment was made about being a white woman. I had to think for a minute. I actually had to look down, and I looked over at Representative Church. I'm like, I guess that's me. I'm the white woman. And you know what? I never benefited from that. I worked hard. I came up in an era where nothing was given to me. And I look at you, my colleagues, my male colleagues, and I believe that when you support something I do, it's because of the work I put in, it's because of the excellence behind it, which I believe is an overriding value on which we should be judged. Excellence, because anyway, who wants a brain surgeon that was promoted based on DEI as opposed to excellence? My path forward, I worked hard for. And when I think about what we did in 2019, I had 28 colleagues, including leadership, sign on to that letter, including the good sponsor, basically pushing back, saying that is not how we wanted our schools to be run. And as I close, I'll say this: I have stood on the House floor every session when higher ed came up, decrying the higher ed because of the DEI. This is something I've been fighting since 2019. I'm grateful to have been on the committee. This is a great step forward. I appreciate the work of our committee and of the good gentleman, and I encourage you to support this.
This bill is just trying to get DEI back to what DEI's original intent was: diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI is no longer diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's been morphed into this ideological viewpoint of divide, exclude, and isolate, because that's all it does now. It divides groups of people, it excludes certain groups of people, and it isolates other groups of people. And in doing that, you lose the whole concept of what DEI's original goal was. This bill doesn't stop teachers from teaching. All it says is you can't force students to be required to take a DEI training course or a DEI instruction course based off of a degree that they're going down when it has nothing to do with anything regarding DEI. This bill is like many bills that happen in this building, where it gets just drawn out into the abstract world of not even having anything to do with the concept and core of the bill. These things we're doing here are clear. It's intentful. It doesn't need to be skewed into obscurity and misguided beliefs. It's plain and simple black and white English on a piece of paper that's just trying to draw things back to the original intent of what DEI always was and it was supposed to be, and makes it good again. Nobody here wants to exclude or divide anybody. We all want to be included and have an equal seat at the table. And if we follow the simple laws of this land and this state, we are all equal, period. So with that, I'll support the motion. I'm glad we're going to get some higher fines going there. And as soon as it hits the floor, it'll have a yes from me.
I'm glad it's got higher fines. Like, yeah, man, look, if we all just like look at the Constitution, look at our Bill of Rights, we're solid. That's the whole, I mean, look, folks, we have the longest standing Constitution in this country. We have the U.S. Constitution, the longest Constitution. Is this how the longest standing Constitution in the history of the world? In the history of the world. We're coming up on 250-year anniversary of our country. The Constitution was written shortly a few years after, so we're not quite there. We're not going to be quite there yet. But in all of world history, there has never been a constitutional republic ruled by a document as long as this one has been. And we are seeing with this DEI, all of this stuff. I mean, 2 years ago, we were screaming CRT. Last year, we were screaming SEL. Now we're screaming DEI. Like, all they do is change the name, but it's all the same cultural Marxist BS, right? But if we just get rid of it and we just say, let's just look to the Constitution. That, my friends, is what helped free our slaves. The slaves in this country were helped free because of the words that were written down in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Up until the Civil War, the entire world had been dealing with the scourge of slavery since the dawn of man. Okay? But the things that were laid down, we heard it earlier, it's a long, slow process. You know, these battles, they don't happen overnight. And the other side will continue to pound away and pound away and pound away. Evil doesn't take a vacation. And neither should you when it comes to our liberties. Wow. Incredible. Our quick acting producers found the poster for that documentary. The only reason I bring this up, and again, this is a independent documentary. This was done, I think, in 2007 is when it was released. And so, you know, it probably took a year or two to make. And so you're talking about watching a film, an independent film from the early 2000s. So give it a little bit of latitude when it comes to the production value on this thing, but you're going to recognize a few people in this documentary. I guarantee it. But the other thing is that this was going on 20 years ago. In fact, even longer, because it became a documentary. It was already happening, right? And this guy says, why is this happening in our institutions? And so he decided to make a documentary about it. So even by that point, this problem was a huge, huge problem. The indoctrination that was going on in our universities. So I highly recommend checking that out. I think you could probably just Google it on YouTube at this point, and find it. So, okay. What else? What else did we have in here? There was something we wanted to cover yesterday, but we missed out on. And it was, what was it? We didn't cover the ivermectin thing. So yeah, let's do that real quick. Ivermectin. We mentioned yesterday, Arkansas has just made it legal to get over the counter. And this morning in one of the committees, Senator Kelly Anthon presented Senate Bill 1211. Let's listen to a little. He goes on for a little bit, but let's listen to a little bit of it.
Bill number 1211. This is a bill that will allow ivermectin, a drug, to be sold and purchased without a prescription in Idaho over the counter. Just to give you a brief introduction to this, let me visit with you just a little bit about it. Ivermectin. This is a drug that has had really immeasurable impacts on improving the lives of billions and billions of people throughout the world since it was discovered. It's been called in many places a wonder drug. It's been able to serve in treating and in many ways curing human diseases, treating parasites, worms in humans, and in most countries it is legal over the counter. Arkansas has just made it legal over the counter. Tennessee has made it legal over the counter. And as I understand it, North Carolina has introduced legislation to make it legal over the counter in just recent days. Ivermectin has been used safely for decades to treat conditions, like I said, such as parasitic infections like river blindness, scabies. The drug has undergone extensive research, and it has been approved by health authorities like the WHO and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for specific uses. It has had wide use in global health programs. It's been a cornerstone in many public health initiatives, especially in low-income regions.
Okay, folks, this is incredible. I mean, it's great, and he goes on for a while here. And to his credit, this is great. But I like, folks, where are we right now? Right, like 4 years ago, they were saying that you were a heretic, you were anti-science, you were evil, you were horrible, you were a grandma killer, you were all of this if you suggested anything other than what Fauci was telling you to do, or what Deborah Birx was telling you what to do, or what Francis Collins was telling you what to do. Oh, we remember your names. We remember your names. It's the one thing. It's the one thing I take issue with when people say, why did Trump put Fauci in charge? Why? Because we would soon have to remember their names. But that's a debate for another day. Fantastic that we were at this point now where you have the leader of the Senate, the leader of the Idaho Senate here, presenting a bill to make ivermectin over the counter, because this thing is made generically. It's found in nature, and it's been made generically. I mean, we could do a whole special on this stuff. But of course, the Democrats, because they need ivermectin to get the worms out of their brains. Listen to some of this.
Do you have any insight as to why there's a requirement for a consultation? Let's see, it has to be a prescription and a consultation, or is it either or? And do you know why?
Senator Anthon.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rutke, I think you're asking me if there's currently a requirement?
Right, yeah.
Senator Anthon.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rutke, I think the answer to that is that we have gone through a process like this in many other cases with many other medicines. And we have gone through a process that until, we get comfortable, until the legislature gets comfortable with certain medications. And I think, I'm going to be honest with you, I think there are business applications to these things. And there's a political application to these things. And there's always a risk assessment to these things. I think we could go through history and find out there were certain medications that until people said, you know what, we're comfortable taking the risk. And I think you'd see it in the opposite direction. And if you look back through history, you would find there were medications that we freely gave out until we said, hey, that's no good, let's start regulating those things. So there's a give and take all the time in these sectors. But I think we've come to the point with regard to ivermectin, and I've heard it testified to today, and I will tell you in my family, I know people who've taken ivermectin because they know its benefits, they know it's not risky. I'm not going to give you names because but the fact of the matter is there's an understanding that this is not a risky drug, and there's a frustration that it's not more readily available. And so this what you're seeing in this bill is a growing consensus that it's time that the state stop restricting people's access to this drug, and that's why I think that there is a belief that there shouldn't be a requirement for a consultation or prescription for this kind of drug.
Amen. Amen. Amen to that. I mean, and again, here we are 4 years later, 5 years later, and we're trying to make ivermectin available for everybody. It won a Nobel Prize, folks. 2015, it won a Nobel Prize, and they tried to scare you. They tried to scare you. They tried to scare you not to take it. Because, why? Because if there was treatment out there, then the vaccines never would have gotten emergency authorization. And then Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and the rest of them wouldn't have been able to roll out their vaccines, and they wouldn't have been able to say this is the only way to get out of the pandemic. What a huge scam. What a huge scam. Well, folks, now that we've covered that section, I can rest assured YouTube will have some issue with this particular episode. So that just means that you got to make sure you have an account on Rumble and on X to make sure that you can continue watching us, because I have no idea. It'll be interesting to see how this episode fares on YouTube and Facebook. But if you're watching us on either of those two platforms, please do make sure you're with us over on Rumble and X as well. And of course, you can, it's never censored over on idahosignal.live ever, because we control that feed. idahosignal.live, folks, that's where you can listen to the program and join us there as always throughout the day. All right, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. We've got some special guests lined up tomorrow to talk through the session, to talk through a very interesting bill, and hopefully they'll make it on. Apologies for not having any legislators on today. A lot of meetings going on. It's very, very busy out there, but I've been talking to them offline, and it is getting it's very interesting, as you can tell because you watch this program. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Take care. God bless.
I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.